From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here is Jim and Rich.
And off and running on another hour of the Armchair Experts, another hour of cogitations, etc., etc. So I think I know what you want to talk about tonight, Rich. I think you want to really analyze the fact that the Bulls re-signed Cartier Martin to a second 10-day contract. I know that's on your list right away to start off with.
Why, I missed that. I still haven't seen Cartier.
You missed his first 10-day contract.
Yeah, no, I actually caught it. I didn't realize 10 days had gone by that fast. I know time was going by pretty quick, but I didn't know it was going by that quick.
Interesting football games this past weekend, I would say.
Baby.
You know, as I sat back and thought about it, I watched the first game. You watched the second game. So I thought the first game was duller than I thought it was. But you know what? When you got Peyton going out throwing for 400 yards, and the Patriots just didn't seem to be there. You know, Patriot defense giving up 500 yards in a game.
Well, if you would have asked me during the week, the run up to those games, who would I favor in the games, I would have said the Patriots in Game 1 and the Seahawks in Game 2. Now that's the fan Rich saying that, but the cynical Rich probably would have said the Broncos in Game 1 and the Seahawks in Game 2, for the simple reason that the cynical Rich would say, well, the NFL probably would really love to have Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl, because he's going to be 38. He's not going to have many more chances to be there. The Patriots have been there. You know, the Brady Belichick show has been there numerous times. And as for Game 2, you know, San Francisco got close but no cigar the last couple of years, and they've won numerous Super Bowls prior to that. And so Seattle, of course, will be the perfect foil for the good guy Brady, because they're the bad guys.
They're the bad guys. That's right.
So cynical Rich would have been able to tell you who the heck was going to be in the Super Bowl and why.
Yeah. And as I look at this now, Denver's a 2-point favorite right now, in case you want to go to the window.
I don't.
Okay.
Not really. It's 2-point favorite. At
2 point.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
That's 2 point. Game went out apparently at 1.
Actually, you know, it's interesting that you should bring that up, though, Jim, because I think it's got the potential to be a very close game. And I would also say that even though it's going to be close, Denver, based on the fact that they have that really potent offense, I would say would have to be somewhat of a favorite.
I think Peyton is going to have a hard time with that Seattle defense.
I don't know about that. I don't think Peyton has a hard time with that many defenses.
Well,
and, you know, Seattle is definitely a darn good defense, but you know, that's Peyton Manning. I got to tell you, that means something.
Yeah. Now, when we talked yesterday, you were.
I was on a roll.
You were on a roll. You were down on the officiating. You were down on the coaching. And by the way, it's kind of funny. I think all of a sudden people are talking about Jim Harbaugh and going, "Oh my God, he's lost 2 NFC title games." Well, he got you to a Super Bowl in between there. He lost 2 NFC title games and a Super Bowl.
Yeah, you know, he did. You know, here's the thing. When I talked to you, I said I thought I was unhappy with the NFL and their rules. I'm unhappy with the officiating in general.
I got an article here we can talk about on officiating.
Unhappy. I didn't think the coaching was that great. I didn't think the quarterback play was that great. I thought the game was actually pretty entertaining. Probably entertaining because all of those things came into play.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I would say, you know, there are some rules in the NFL that really I don't understand at all, Jim. When you saw Navarro Bowman, and you didn't see that.
Now I've seen the play because there was a link in this particular article.
You saw the play.
To see the play.
I mean, there wasn't even at first when you saw the original camera shot.
Right.
Okay, it looked like the whoever had the ball for Seattle had lost the ball, and there was a big fight underneath the pile for the ball. But then when they showed it from the closer angle, I don't know what they were fighting about because Bowman clearly had that ball. Now, the thing that I don't understand, the NFL, you can review this, you can review that, but a critical, crucial type of a play like a fumble, which is a game changer or can be, you can't review that in the NFL? I mean, that's what kind of rule is that? You can actually throw the flag for where the ball is spotted, but you can't throw the flag and challenge whether the ball has changed possession
Whether
on a fumble.
on a possession.
That I was stunned when Pereira came on and said that.
Yeah.
And I said, what kind of stupid rule is this?
Yeah. Now, this article actually came off the 49ers website talking about the officiating, and they said, I'm trying to find this. The center, Jonathan Goodwin, said, the 49ers center, in games like that, you're going to think about the what-ifs, especially on the questionable calls. I could play it over in my head for the whole off-season, but it's not going to change anything. 3 plays in particular they talk about. A running into the kicker penalty against Seattle's Chris Maragos against the 49ers' Andy Lee on a 4th and 10 punt from the 20-yard line. I think that was one you were talking about.
Yeah, actually, that's one where I think the officials, even though by rule they got it wrong, my feeling is that is the correct call.
Right.
What they did. But they're going to hear about it from the league. From the league's point of view, it's not correct.
Right, because on the Fox broadcast analyst and former director of officiating, Mike Pereira, said that since Maragos hit Lee's plant leg, it should have been a roughing the kicker, which carries a 15-yard penalty and a first down instead of a 5-yard penalty.
Now, see, there's another stupid thing. Okay, he explained that. Okay, and just to repeat what you said, his explanation is that if the defensive player hits the plant leg, it's automatically 15. Yet if you hit the kicking leg, it's 5. My feeling, and I haven't done a lot of officiating, but I've done a little bit, is I would be looking for the officials to look for intent. And when I first saw the play from the original angle, I thought, okay, this is a roughing the kicker. But when they showed again a closer look at the play, the Maragos, I didn't realize it was him.
Yeah,
he was actually trying to hold up.
You said he was. You said he was trying to pull up,
and it was just unfortunate that Lee got his foot caught under Maragos. They threw the flag. I think that was right. They needed to throw a flag, but I think in this case, even though they'll hear about it, I think the 5-yard penalty was correct. Now there was one intentional grounding call on Russell Wilson. And then there was another that they didn't call because apparently he was outside the tackle box.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking with Jim Matthews over coffee the other day, and I said, how the heck? Now, on that play, Wilson had started out one way. Then he reversed field and came back the other way. He's being chased. Decided to unload it. Now, the whole time, Jim, I'm looking at the hash marks because as they're looking at the replay, Buck and Aikman are talking about the tackle box. And I'm thinking, I understand that these are professional officials, but I could not remember where that play started. And I'm sure the official, it probably was the, what would that be? Not the back judge, but it would be the referee.
The ref.
The referee is watching the quarterback for roughing the passer and whatnot. So I'm sure he's the one watching that play. But if he's watching the quarterback, there was so much activity with Wilson, I would think any human being, is going to lose track of where on the field that ball was actually snapped.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching the hash marks, and when Wilson unloaded the ball, he was inside the hash marks, and then as he sort of fell forward or took a step forward, he was outside the hash marks. And I believe that Buck and Aikman tried to cover for the officials a little bit because it was a no call. Harbaugh had a fit, and my thing on that is, I think intentional grounding should be intentional grounding. Now, when I'm talking to Jim, I said, "Well, how did they come up with this? If you're inside the tackle box and you throw it away, it's grounding. If you're outside the tackle box, it's not." And he said, "You know what? I really didn't know." And he said, "Well, I think it's a safety rule. In other words, you don't want to open up the quarterback outside the tackle box for a real hard hit." So you give him the opportunity to throw it away.
To dump the ball off, right?
And I said, yeah, I guess I understand, and I think he's actually right because when I remember first hearing about the rule, I thought, yeah, that's what it is. But I disagree with it. I don't care. Grounding's grounding.
Yeah, and I think Jim was right on that. That probably changed a few years ago.
Yeah,
just more for a safety issue and that might have gone back to the days. Remember when they had the in the grasp rule?
Right.
You couldn't tackle you couldn't sack a quarterback when the whistle blew, and you had your arms around him.
Well,
it might have gone back at that point.
Here's the other thing, though, Jim. On the 49ers' first touchdown, Gore was out of the game, and whoever the backup was in took his first shot. And the 49ers scored eventually. But what I'm looking at is he took whoever the back was dove over the line and sort of hit the pile. And when they showed the replay and they had Pereira on again, okay, his legs were on top of the pile. But his forearm hit just before the goal line, and then he rolled in, and the officials called it a touchdown. Now, what burns me, and you've heard me say this when we do, or maybe I haven't said this when we do high school, I really, when I watch games at home with my kids, I'll say, this rule about the ground not being able to cause a fumble is BS, okay? Because, you're going down, and just because your arm hit and your knee's not quite down yet, you get away with fumbling the ball. Now, in this play, he definitely continued. He rolled into the end zone. But now Pereira explains, hey, you know what? When his forearm went down, he was down. I'm thinking, if his forearm's down in the middle of the field and he fumbles and his knee's not down, that's not a fumble. But if his forearm's down and his knee's not down on the 1 yard line just before the goal line, he's down. So how is that right?
How is that right?
So do we have two sets of rules for when you're inside the 5 and when you're between the 5s, or what? You know what? I think they did a lot of covering up, or you know what?
Are you just saying Fox did more of the covering up, or?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to say covering up, but I just say it was a really crazy game. The officials, some of their calls, I'm sure the teams didn't agree with, but I thought were good, like the running into the kicker.
Mm-hmm.
But at other ones, they had a call by rule, but there were a lot of controversial calls.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they out and out. The one that they really blew was the recovery at the goal line by Bowman, that was negated anyway the next play because the 49ers got the ball back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I have to say, Jim, my question about the coaching comes in. Because when we talked on the phone, okay, and I hate, I don't want to filibuster you, but
no, go ahead.
The situation is the fourth quarter. Seattle's up by 3, ball on the 1 yard line, fourth down, and Carroll chooses to go now, there's probably about.
If you start getting too long-winded,
okay,
we'll
put
you'll get the shotgun.
And at that point, I want to say there's probably 8 or 9 minutes left in the game. And Aikman and Buck first guessed. They said, you know what, we agree with this because if they score, it'll be 10 up, and we don't think the 49ers, based on what they've shown so far, can catch up. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know what, I think I'd take the field goal for one reason. Now, you have to sort of think negative, or you have to think about what the worst could be. So if you take the field goal there, you're up by 6. Okay? Now, what happened is they went for the touchdown. They fumbled. San Francisco got the ball back. They ate up a bunch of time with a drive that stalled. Seattle got the ball back, drove into field goal position. Now Hauschka kicks like around a 40-yard field goal. This is maybe 4 or 5, 6 minutes later. So now it's still a 6-point lead, but here's where not taking the field goal initially could have come back and bit them. Now San Francisco goes on a drive with about 3 minutes left. If they score now,
game's over.
Game is over.
Game's over.
And you have put yourself now. Here's the other thing: if you take and what had happened is, if he would have taken the field goal early on, and say San Francisco scores and comes back and leads by 1, Seattle can get the ball back. Only needs to get a field goal to win the game.
Right.
But the fact that they went for the touchdown, missed. Now San Francisco comes back and scores, and maybe you don't have that much time left. You got to score a touchdown. You have no field goal does you no good.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, Pete Carroll, hey, it's a gutsy call, but are you thinking about what could happen? You still got 8 or 9 minutes left in the game. You got to think about that. So it was a weird game.
Weird game, weird officiating.
And I also have to say that for those people who say that Colin Kaepernick and Russell Wilson, are going to be the coming answers to Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. No, it's not.
No.
Not yet.
No, not yet.
And maybe not ever.
I think the next. I think the successor to Peyton Manning is going to be Andrew Luck.
He's the guy.
He
should be the guy.
Now it's interesting. I watched the injury to Bowman on that fumble recovery. That was ugly. Ooh.
Yeah, it really was.
Wow.
It was sort of you didn't. And you know what? What's the outcome of that, Jim? I haven't looked at the paper. What are they saying?
ACL and MCL.
So both.
Both.
Okay.
Both.
No.
And it's still amazing that the league does not review a play like that.
I can't believe that rule.
If the same situation occurs in the end zone or on the sidelines, it's reviewable. And the fact that it's not reviewable within the field of play, that's something that's been overlooked for far too long.
I would say so.
A couple of people tweeted after here, Kevin Mawe, huge missed call by NFL referees. Continue to make boneheaded mistakes like this one, and no one will be on your side during your next negotiations. David William Naylor from the Sporting News. I'm going to suggest that if you can't review possession of a clear fumble on the goal line, the replay rule needs some tweaking.
Yeah, it needs some tweaking is right.
Yeah.
I have to say this. The other thing that and I've talked to you about this, and I don't know if you've seen it yet, but when what's her name, Aaron
Andrews?
Aaron Andrews gets Richard Sherman on right after the game.
Whoa!
And he goes into his Mr. T from Rocky III rant. And at first, Jim, I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, you know what? Man, this guy is a moron. But then later on, they had him a couple other times when he had calmed down, and he's and speaks very intelligently. He's a Stanford grad.
Communications major. He was graduated second in his high school class.
And, I started to think about this, and I thought, you know what, this is something the TV deserves, because you get a guy a minute or two after a game, and this guy, his adrenaline was still pumping, obviously, and you get this Mr. T rant from a guy who's obviously an intelligent guy, but what do you expect? You put I'm surprised, and I've heard other commentators say this since I said this to you on the phone the other day, I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often.
It really is surprising that it doesn't happen more often. And you keep in mind one thing. Obviously, he was a communications major in college because he looked right into the camera and he didn't swear.
He didn't swear. The other thing is, you know what?
He knew he was on. I think Richard Sherman is a great self-promoter.
I was going to say, you took the words out of my mouth. He's actually... I'm thinking Mr. T, but also reminiscent of Muhammad Ali.
What was one of Muhammad Ali's greatest quotes? It ain't bragging if you can do it.
Yeah. So and you know what? He is just he's really a good football player. The other thing is, I love during and this whole segment with Aaron Andrews only took probably 30 or 45 seconds.
Not even that.
Was it less than that?
I think it was about 20. I watched the clip, and it was about at the 28-second mark, and I think she was about to ask a follow-up question, and she must
pulled
have
the plug,
and she got it in the ear, sent it back upstairs.
Well, you know what? Too, she misunderstood. He was, and I can't remember exactly what he said, and she responded to him as if he was talking to her.
To her, right?
And then he understood that she misunderstood, and he reiterated that he was speaking about Michael Crabtree, because I think he, as you say, he's a communications major, so even though he was ranting, I think some of it was also, he knew what he was saying.
Oh, yeah.
Not just spouting off.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing about it is that I think he didn't want her to feel that he was threatening her in any way, shape, or form.
And I think when he got on later, he was very apologetic of the way he acted. Of course, I did see a clip. I don't know when it happened, but something earlier this year when he was on with Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. And he called out Skip Bayless.
Yeah, I heard he called out Skip Bayless.
So
yeah.
anybody who calls out Skip Bayless can't be all bad.
Can't be bad. Did you hear? Now, he had a thing, I don't know if it was this year or in a previous year, he had a thing going with Calvin Johnson where they call Calvin Johnson Megatron. And that's from the movie, what's the name of that movie? I can't think of it.
Yeah.
James, you know the movie? The character named Megatron? Transformers. So Sherman started calling himself, and I can't think of the name of the
Optimus Prime.
Optimus Prime.
That's where it came from.
So
right?
so Sherman, and he's gotten into it with Calvin Johnson. I think he had something going with one of the quarterbacks in the league. But it seems as if it's all for show. And you know what? I think people take it sort of serious because he's a very aggressive player, and so they hook the two things together and come up with a bad guy. But I don't think you really have that bad of a guy at all.
No. Interesting article from yesterday on Yahoo Sports from Dan Wetzel, titled "This is why Richard Sherman's attitude bluster is necessary to survive in a brutal NFL." Not going through the whole article, but some of the things. Players have to find ways to overcome the fear of what might happen to them: pain, loss, embarrassment, failure, and debilitation. Every game is a roll of the dice, and far more bad can happen than good. Almost no one leaves unscathed, not in body, not in reputation. They are paid handsomely for the job, but when you're hauled off the field with a mangled knee or your poor play is being mocked on the big screen, the money isn't much help. Some turn to God, writing sayings on their uniforms, pointing to the heavens after the big play. Some pump themselves up with bravado, sack dances, and choreographed touchdown celebrations. Some overwhelm themselves with the fire of being doubted, inventing the concepts that no one thought they'd win. Some play for lost relatives. Some fall back on a blue-collar lunch pail, act like you've been there before ethos. Others, such as Richard Sherman, revel in building their self-esteem by tearing down others, often by talking and talking and talking and talking. Eventually, Sunday live on national television in a manner that was so over the top that Fox, mind you, decided to cut it short.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with not liking Sherman. As sure as he is free to act as he chooses, fans are free to judge him on that and react accordingly. That's part of the deal. The only mistake is to assume that everyone in the NFL should act the same way. It's fine to seek out a player who is capable of calmly shutting off his emotion, acting with humility, even if it's just an act, and hearkening back to some Chip Hilton lesson of yesterday. Did you ever read any Chip Hilton?
Oh, yeah. He's the best.
Oh, yeah. There are plenty of those guys in the NFL, too. Just don't expect everyone to be the same.
That's true.
Now, you come into some other things. I said it can change from player to player. An off-sided example is the way to comport yourself on the field was the Detroit Lions' great Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, too, who dashed into the end zone and handed the ball back to the ref.
Did you notice, Jim, now that you said that, Marshawn Lynch on, I don't know if what the play was. I think it was a touchdown, although I thought he only scored one touchdown. Maybe he scored two. But at any rate, you know what? He was shaking hands with all of his linemen. Then he did some bumps with some of his brothers, but it was an interesting thing. I haven't seen guys do a regular handshake after to celebrate for a long time.
Yeah.
I was going to say to you the bottom line, I think, Jim, for the game though, for me, is did you ever meet? You never met my friend Tanya Johnson?
No, you've spoken of her.
Tanya, I would hope that, and she's way the heck out in. She's out in the northwest suburbs and coaching at Zion Benton, but would be an interesting person to have on the show if we can ever get her in this area. But a few years ago, when she was coaching the Loyola girls, lost a real heartbreaking game to Maine South. I think it was either the regional or the sectional final. And by almost everybody's by what everybody said was really terrible call at the end of the game by the officials that cost Loyola the game. And I talked to Tanya about it on the phone, and I said, geez, everybody I talked to said, Tanya, those were terrible calls. And she said, well, it was a bad call. She said, but what I said to my team after the game was that the referee didn't lose you the game. We lost the game. We had plenty of chances to win the game. We should have never been in the position for the game to be that close. And so, yes, did the referee make a poor call at the end when it was really critical? He did, but that did not lose us the game. And why I'm saying this is, despite the officials, the reason the 49ers lost the game, in my opinion, is that on 3 scoring plays, and one of the plays was not a scoring play but led to a scoring play, the 49ers had breakdowns in their defensive backfield. Mm-hmm. And had those plays been made, and they normally would have been by the 49ers, but on this day they weren't, had those plays been made, 49ers win the game.
Yeah.
Because on the 4th and 7, when Wilson launched one that was caught inside the 10 and ended up to be the first score of the game for the Seahawks on a field goal, he had scrambled, and the 2 deep men sort of relaxed, and when he let go of the ball, they were sort of caught with their pants down. On the touchdown pass into the end zone to Curse, that was a ball that was thrown really well. It was a nice catch, but there were 2 49ers defenders right there. That ball should have probably been knocked down. And on Lynch's 40-yard touchdown run, the defensive safety really came up and committed himself too early. Instead of taking a pursuit angle to the sideline, allowed Lynch to get outside, ended up to be a 40-yard touchdown run. So really, 3 breakdowns in the secondary is the reason the 49ers are home for Super Bowl Sunday, regardless of what the officiating was.
Okay. Well, one other thing in this article, and again, we're talking about the players and why Richard Sherman act the way he did, or just why players act the way they do at that moment. And certainly, we've gone over this enough. Some people will criticize Richard Sherman and say that he probably made more Denver Broncos fans,
probably,
than anything. But you're just kind of building it up. It's all the same. It's why criticism of Tim Tebow thanking his Lord via Tebowing was just as ill-conceived. That was his thing. It was worth respecting, even if some found it as unnerving as a Sherman choke sign. Mm-hmm. All of this is just players looking for something to aid themselves in pursuit of a victory in a sport where so many things are outside of their control. Certainly, virtually all would agree that class and camaraderie are superior concepts to gloat and greed. It would be great if it didn't occur. Mm-hmm. It would be great if no one cut anyone off in traffic or backstabbed for a promotion or scammed the government or any number of things that do. Mm-hmm. Richard Sherman acts the way he acts because he's determined that that it's the best way for him to maximize his ability in his chosen profession and minimize the overwhelming doubts that come from playing the lonely position of shutdown corner.
I agree with that. I mean, it's strictly a psych job, and he was still pumped up. Jim, did I mention this to you when we talked on the phone? You remember Dirty Al Coconatus?
Yeah.
He told me one time when he was still alive that he and a friend of his went to see the Bears play the 49ers at Wrigley Field back in the day. And his friend knew one of the 49ers players. I don't know if it was like Leo Namalini or Bob St. Clair, one of the big linemen. And he said after the game, they hopped the wall at the Wrigley Field and went down because these guys were walking off, and there was 2 of them, the whoever the player was that the guy knew and another player, and they were just going to go up and say hello. And they got up close. Al was telling me they got up close, and his friend, and this was legit. It wasn't like he just said he knew this guy and he didn't. He said they got up close, and he says they didn't even want to approach him because this was minutes after the game, and his words, they were basically still like frothing at the mouth almost because they were so hyped up from the game. Yeah. So, and this is back in the, if you want to say the good old days when you didn't have any so-called, outlaws in the league. And I don't think Richard Sherman is an outlaw. I'm not trying to say that.
No.
But that article that you just read, Jim, is so well put. And I think it just, you said, Tebow had his thing that he had to do to get his mind right. This guy's got his thing.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple of things at the end, and I want to get this in before we go to a break here. Let's see. I said and when that is rewarded and affirmed in one of the most brilliant plays you'll ever see, yeah, he's going to double down on it every single time. The sport is too vicious, too erratic, too arbitrary not to not understand and at some level respect the crutch, whatever the crutch that those players lean on. Because in an instant you can be Navarro Bowman,
Yeah.
and in an instant you could be headed to the Super Bowl. That much every player understands.
Well, are we going to a break right
Well,
now,
getting
Jim? Or
close, 1 minute.
I was going to say, in that 1 minute, I have to go sort of piggybacking on what you're saying. I'm watching the game with my wife, and Mike. There was a pattern where Michael Crabtree slanted in about a 5 or 6 yarder, and Kaepernick threw the ball, and I think even the announcers made mention of the fact that he had his arms out and he pulled them in. And I looked at Mary and I said, yeah, he sort of had alligator arms there. But I said, having said that, based on what's happening in the league and what you just mentioned there, that guys don't know if they're going to be carted off the field or going to be heroes. You know what? I don't blame the man for. There would have been a time when I said, no guts. He pulled his arms on. But you know what? You got a defender steaming at you, and you're going to extend yourself. And it's a 5 or 6 yard play, and you're going to get your brains knocked out for that? I don't know about that.
No.
So, and I just wanted to add that after what you read, just because it struck me as there would have been a time when I said, that guy is, you know what, he's a.
All right, let's take a break.
You are listening to Armchair Experts on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John Navita Broadcast Center. And now back to Jim and Rich.
Actually, we had decided on Sunday I wanted to go out and see a movie on Sunday night, and I didn't know if I wanted to sit all day watching football. First game was entertaining. It wasn't exactly the artistic thing that I think everyone both hoped for when you had probably 2 of the 5 greatest players ever to play quarterback in the league go up against each other. I think the one thing that I can say all year, and I'm not a big fan of Bill Belichick, but the coaching job he did this year.
Yeah, very good.
Very good. A terrible defense. Really a terrible defense. And I mean, you lose some major players in your offense. I mean, you don't have Gronkowski all year or for most of the year. Wes Welker's gone. And to come the way they did, that's an incredible coaching job.
Well, my hat's off. I mean, I agree with you on Belichick, but my hat is off to the Denver defense because the fact that they were able to stuff the New England running game really affected the New England passing game, and I think the Denver defense, without even seeing the game, in my mind, would be the MVP of the game.
Yeah. I mean, the Denver defense. I mean, you look at this. They did give up 320 yards, but I mean, New England, who had been running the ball very effectively, only managed 64 yards on the ground.
Well, Blount, who had gone for 166 yards and I don't know how many carries the previous week, had 6 yards and 5 carries.
6 yards on 5 carries. Ben Vereen's nephew, I guess that is. There was the Vereen on the team.
Vereen, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. 4 times for 34 yards, and Ridley only had 17.
Wow.
So I really thought the Denver defense just was really, really good. And I think Seattle, it'll be interesting to see how Seattle can handle the Denver defense. You think if Denver finishes this off with a victory, we're going to see Peyton ride off into the sunset? Maybe Champ Bailey, too? I think it would be a great finish to a career.
It would be a great finish to the career. Champ Bailey, I think, maybe for sure, because you're talking about a guy who's been, 12 years in the league and at a really difficult position to stay in the league that long at. And Manning, I'm not real sure. I mean, he's I don't know if he's ever satisfied with whatever he does, so he may be back. But I would say Champ, there's a good chance, especially if they win, that he may be gone.
Peyton will pick up another commercial endorsement across.
He just loves it, and you could tell you could tell when he plays the game, he enjoys the heck out of it. He's the show out there.
Oh, absolutely. I love the Omaha.
Omaha, yeah.
Did you hear the answer that he gave to somebody during the week when they asked about what Omaha meant? You talk about an incredible non-answer to something. Well, it can mean different things at different times, and it can mean different plays. It depends on what time it is during the game, whether we're home or away, the way the wind is blowing, and what color uniforms we have.
Actually, that might be a straight answer.
In this day of the way they run plays in the NFL, that could exactly be the answer. But the way he delivered it.
Yeah. Well, I think that, and obviously we don't know him, but my sense of the way he is that that's just the answer doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So,
the other thing, and I was thinking about this today with the whole thing with Richard Sherman, and I began to think back to the first Super Bowl. And a defensive back that played for Kansas City in that first Super Bowl who chirped an awful lot.
The Hammer,
and who had to be carted off the field unconscious.
Yeah, right. They knocked him out during the game, and he was gone.
And I'm thinking, wouldn't that be funny?
It would be interesting, yeah. Anything can happen.
Anything else we want to talk about? Before we say let's make our predictions.
No, and I thank you for letting me go on at length about the game.
No, because that really was the more interesting game. I think I probably should have watched that. We went to see Saving Mr. Banks Sunday night, and
who's in that?
That's Tom Hanks, Emma Thompson. That's actually the story of how Disney made Mary Poppins.
Oh, okay, that's right. I think I did hear about that.
And I my mini review of the movie was. I think from all the hype, I expected more, and I was kind of like,
where is it? If there's more, where is it?
Emma Thompson, as she played the author, was just a little too harpy.
Okay.
But that was the way the woman was. She insisted on everything being recorded, and actually, as they were running the credits, she had all the meetings recorded while they were going over the script and deciding what to do with it. And you heard her on these recordings from 50 years ago, and that's exactly the way the movie was, and that's exactly the way this woman was.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
But by the way, speaking of movies, and I don't want to get onto that subject since we are probably going to go on to something else sports-wise, but Harvey told me yesterday that I think it's on our cable, channel 363, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, I think was on last night.
Oh.
And I missed it.
I missed that.
Yeah.
I've been trying to keep an eye on that channel every so often.
I would have loved to see that.
To see that.
Anytime.
That was one of my favorites. That's one I'd sit down and watch anytime.
Yep.
One other item that came up football-wise today, and I was curious. Excuse me. I was curious as to what your thoughts on this before we get into some other stuff. Roger Goodell is talking about eliminating the extra point and making a touchdown worth 7 points.
Oh, God.
And you can run or pass for an eighth, but if you don't make it, the touchdown goes back to 6.
Oh, wow. That's sort of interesting.
And they're also talking about eliminating the kickoff, too.
The kickoff?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, pretty soon, we're really not going to be much of a football game anymore. I thought maybe that they were going to eliminate the extra points so they could get more commercials in between the touchdown and the kickoff. And now, listen, if they eliminate the kickoff, they will be able to do that because you'll eliminate 2 plays that way, so you could at least throw in 2 more commercials.
That's right. You'll be able to fit 2 more in.
So,
I was curious what your thought was on that.
What my thought is on that. I'm a purist, I guess you would say. I don't. My initial thought, because I didn't see the article, I haven't read the paper at all today, is I'm not really for it.
I don't know if it's an article or if it's just something that hit the news wires today. As I'm flipping through the paper here quickly.
Although it would, the interesting thing though, Jim, I guess from a strategic standpoint, is if the way you explained it, if you decide to go for the 2 and you miss, you don't even get the 7, you get the 6.
You get the 6.
That would be to me, from a sort of strategic standpoint, that at least would make it a little bit interesting.
Yeah, and I find that somebody kind of suggested in passing today on the boards, and of course everybody posts more tongue-in-cheek than anything else. I think it would be fun if the person who scored would have to kick the extra point.
Well,
then you'd be having some fun out there.
That would be a great idea.
I see some 350-pound lineman who falls on a fumble and rumbles in there have to kick the extra point.
I have to say, again, to be the cynical side of me says that some of this is economic, because if you eliminate the point after touchdown and the kickoff, you still have the field goal. But some teams used to anyway. I don't know if many of them do anymore, but used to have their point after and field goal man, and then they'd have a different guy for kickoffs.
Right. I remember the Bears at one point. I remember Bob Jenks and Roger LeClaire at one point.
Okay.
One couldn't kick field goals decently, and the other one couldn't kick off.
Yeah.
As we go back into the old days when they were leather helmets.
But I'm just thinking to myself, the economic in terms of, and I'm not kidding around. I think they can get more commercials in if they eliminate those 2 plays, and I think that might be a consideration. And the other thing is that. Again, you might be able to eliminate a player. Next thing you know, that maybe they'll just say no more field goals, and then they eliminated a player.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I would say, at least from the standpoint of economics, TV type of economics, the cynical part of me says, well, yeah, you eliminate those 2 plays, you get more TV commercial time in there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for.
I don't know. I was just curious of your opinion on it. I
gotta say this: the kickoff is really a dangerous play.
Yeah,
and
to a certain extent, I can understand that. Mm-hmm.
But what are you going to do with it? Where are you going to place the ball?
What are you going to say? You're going to put everybody's going to start at the 20?
Yeah, I mean that's to me. I don't know how you're going to do that. And really, now you're going to take a game that in my mind, is getting more. I hate to say this. I am a football fan. I enjoyed that game I watched yesterday, even with I think because of all the crap that was going on.
Whoops.
But
watch the word.
I can't say that word.
I don't think so.
I think I can say that one, right?
No, John. It's going to get on. It's going to get on WRHS.
Christmas. We don't want that on WRHS. But I think you have a game.
John is in there going.
You have a game that's getting more and more sterile to me. I don't find it interesting. Most of the games I don't think are interesting. The games are too long. The games, everybody does the same things in terms of offense. I find that that part I find non-interesting. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to have, as you say, what are you going to have everybody start from the 20 and make it even less interesting? I mean, that's the way I look at it.
How did you feel when they took out the jump ball rule in college? Or in basketball, really, and made it alternate possessions?
I initially probably didn't like it, but I think that's a little bit different type of a thing.
But I mean, it's just an element of the game that suddenly has been taken away and eliminates.
And that, put it this way: in that instance, at least in theory, everything turns out even because you get the ball, the other guy gets the ball, back and forth. But eliminating the kickoff, evens it, but at the same time, field position is so important. If you have a good return game, or you have somebody who makes a big return, that's super critical.
Yeah.
So now you're going to take, how about the Bears? The Bears prior, when Lovie Smith is coach, when Hester was in his heyday,
you wouldn't have had a
couldn't
Hester.
have won anything.
You wouldn't have had a Hester. Now, I think the issue with the as regarding the extra point, he said Goodell said only 5 of them were missed this past season.
Okay, that's fine.
So
but that's
maybe,
5. Now let me ask
that's
you this
his theory.
Though. Didn't Green Bay end up with a tie game, and why did the extra point come into play on that game?
I think so. I think he missed.
And
an
that was
extra
a
point.
huge game.
That was a big game. That was a big game.
So I even though you say, how about if you have a game where the extra point now becomes not a gimme because you have less than ideal conditions. You have, wasn't it on a field goal there at Soldier Field a few years ago where that ball just went totally wacky?
Right.
And it could happen even on a short kick like an extra point, depending on the wind.
An extra point.
Or if you have an exceptionally muddy or snowy day, the extra point is not an automatic thing. So how about in a game where it's a crucial game, you're at the end of the season, you're playing in the snow, there's no sure thing about the handling of the ball. The ball didn't the Cowboys lose a big game when Romo mishandled the snap.
The
on an
Cowboys
extra point?
lost a game, lost a playoff game, or lost a chance to get into the play 2 years in a row, as I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, because Romo couldn't handle a snap on an extra point.
Well, I'll give you an example of now it didn't come into play because they had the game under control, but New England, when they played, who did they play when they won at? Did they play at home? Were they playing Indy?
Yeah,
they played Indy.
Yeah,
they missed their punter was hurt, and he's the holder on field goals and extra points. And Gostkowski was doing the punting, and I'm watching this game, Jim, and I never heard the announcer say anything about the fact that the punter was out. It's a critical. Now that's not the kickoff, but I'm going to get to the extra point part of it. The first time, now you had Gostkowski punting, and he did a good job of that. But that would have been critical if he wouldn't have done a good job at it, because field position comes into play. But on the first time the Patriots scored after the punter was hurt, they went for 2. The next 2 times the game was in hand, so Brady held, and he did a good job. But say that you put Brady or whoever it is in, and they're competent, they probably have held before, but they haven't held all year for an extra point or a field goal. That could be a critical thing. If he mishandles the snap and you don't make the extra point, that could come into play. You could lose and that was a playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it as, even though only 5 were missed, it's not. There's so many things that go into play on a field an extra point. Even though it's become a gimme in the NFL, I don't see eliminating it.
I would be against it. All right, what's your pick?
My pick, I'll take Denver in a close game.
I think I'm going to have to agree. It's going to be Denver, and I think it's going to be a good one. I really think this is going to be a good ball game. Well,
you know what I would say, and I don't want to. I'm not going to give you a big log analysis, but I would say Denver, even though Seattle's got a great defense, Denver has a very good offense, and I think they will be able to move the ball a bit on the Seattle defense. Seattle's offense, on the other hand, I don't think is so strong, and I think Denver's defense is strong enough to handle Seattle's offense. So those 2 things, to me, say Denver.
Okay. I would agree with you on that. One item that I heard late this afternoon, and we get into baseball, we can talk a little bit. I was going to talk a little bit more about baseball, but when we got with the football things, I kind of put some things aside.
Sorry about that.
Until next time. I wanted to talk prospects, Cub prospects.
No, Cub prospects.
I want to talk Cub prospects. I know how much you love to talk about Cub prospects.
Okay.
The Yes Network is reporting that
Yes Network.
The Yes Network.
Oh, yes. I was going to say, what kind of networks are you watching?
The Yes Network is reporting that the Yankees and the Cubs are the final two, apparently, or the two highest.
For Tanaka?
Over Tanaka.
Boy.
Now,
Be still my heart.
I was going to say, how you going to feel about that? Is the rebuilding plan over if they spend $25 million a year on this guy?
Well, first off, I don't believe they're going to get him. And I'm sort of,
I'd be shocked.
I would be shocked.
I would be shocked.
And the other thing is, I don't even know what to say, because this thing is such a screwy. I'm talking about the Cubs' supposed rebuild. I do know this: they're going to need pitching when and if, and I'll say the if is the bigger part of that. If these position player prospects make it, and they are decent players, they're going to need to address the pitching. But I'm not really a big fan of most of the Japanese players who've come over here, and I'm not really sure what was Tanaka's record. 24 and zip.
24 and zip, and an earned run average of like $1.32 or something like that.
They still never say, and you and I talked about this, and we don't pretend to be experts on the Japanese baseball leagues, but over the years, as a baseball and a sports fan, I've acquired some of the names of the big league teams in Japan. You have the Oryx Blue Wave, the Tokyo Giants, the Carp.
Yeah, right.
And you know what?
But
I don't
team,
remember this Rakuten Eagles. Or
no,
however
this
you say
is
it,
unless they've
being a big league team.
Unless they had an expansion.
And if they had expansion, but here's the other thing: the Japanese big leagues are competitive baseball within their own realm there, and I don't see anybody. There's been some good big leaguers who've gone over there.
Now
they've not been 24-0.
I did hear somebody who played against him, actually who played here, Andrew Jones, said he's a good ball player. He's for real.
Okay. But what does that mean? Does that mean that he's a 24-0 guy in the major leagues?
I'm waiting for the Tommy John surgery.
Here's what I would say. Who was the guy that we had, the center fielder, that Fukudome? He played Major League Baseball. He survived for 3-4 years, whatever he did. You could say the same thing about Fukudome. Was he able to compete in the majors? Yeah, but at what level?
Right.
That's the problem.
Right. A lot of, some people asked, how would you rank the Japanese leagues compared to baseball over here? And a lot of people say, it's like AAA. AAA, maybe a little above AAA.
I believe that, maybe.
So the question will be, well, first of all, I don't expect him to be signed. The early stories during the week was supposed to be both coast teams were supposed to be involved, the L.A. and New York. His wife is apparently a popular Japanese singer, a pop singer.
Right.
And she wants to have that contact. And what they were also looking for is a large Japanese community wherever they lived. I don't know if the Chicago area has a large Japanese community.
I don't know either. I would assume that New York does, and L.A. probably for sure does.
Sure.
But I would say this: if the Yankees, it's the Yankees versus the Cubs, and it's money that is the issue. I don't see how the Cubs win that bidding. I mean, unless this guy has got relatives in Chicago that he really wants to stay with or something. No, I don't see us outbidding the Yankees for a player if they want him.
Yeah. Now, I was going to get on a couple of things here because I thought last week, starting last week, since the Hall of Fame was announced, I thought two of the biggest non-stories was such an over-analysis of Hall of Fame voting, and what kind of cap is somebody going to wear when he goes into the Hall of Fame? Big deal.
Yeah, big deal is right. I know that you had said to me that somebody had, I don't know if it was on a blog or a text or a tweet or whatever, had mentioned that, Greg Maddux, he's a Chicago guy originally, he should be wearing the Cubs hat, but Most of his success was with the Braves, so
Right.
obviously he's got to wear the Braves hat.
Right, and then, somebody else said, well, Carlton Fisk played more games with the White Sox than he did with the Red Sox, but he wore a Red Sox cap coming in. Well,
Does the player have the choice?
player has the choice.
So, yeah. I know that Andre Dawson had an MVP season and was a really well-liked player in Chicago, but he was smart enough to realize, hey, I played most of my career with the Expos. That's who they gave me my start. I had most of my really good years there. I'm wearing the Expos hat. And what's wrong with that? That's the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And Carlton Fisk, by the way, even though he played more years here in Chicago, is a East Coast guy.
He's an
I think
East Coast. He's
from
from
Vermont or Connecticut
Vermont,
or something like that.
Vermont, New Hampshire, or something
Hampshire,
like that.
New Hampshire.
He's a New England guy, so I
Yeah.
would understand that. And I mean, the other issue was the analysis of voting, because some of these guys, the way their votes were, that they publicized their votes, I think then they're trying to make themselves the story.
You mean the people?
The
who are
writers,
voting?
the
Yeah.
writers, the baseball writers. That the one guy who voted only for 3 players,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and, and one of them was Hideo. One of them was Hideo Nomo. And he wouldn't vote for anyone in the 90s because they all used steroids.
There's got to. I'll tell you what. The one thing. Now, I'm not totally, as you know, I'm not an anti of the guys who use steroids. But one of the terrible parts of this whole steroid era, if you want to call it, is that it has created such confusion with this voting and this Hall of Fame thing, because the guys who the fingers are being pointed at in the main are guys who should be in the Hall of Fame with their careers, if it wasn't for this darn steroid question, would be these guys would be first time, no question about it. You got Barry Bonds, you got Roger Clemens, you've got Rafael Palmeiro, who's one of only a handful of guys who've got 500 homers and 3,000
hits.
And then I would just say, if I was a voter, I don't know that Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa would be first ballot guys, but I think I think you got to say they're in the Hall of Fame. 600 and some home runs should get you into the Hall of Fame. So I don't know. That's the shame of the whole steroid thing.
And then going back to what I said before, if you do that, well, if they're going to be put into the Hall of Fame, considering what they did to, quote, tarnish the game or whatever, well, then you put in Pete Rose.
Well, he's definitely should be.
And you put in Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Yeah.
Even though he went on trial for throwing a World Series that happened a century ago, he wasn't convicted.
No, that's true.
He wasn't convicted. None of those players were ever convicted. If you go back to the 1919 White Sox scandal. And the issue with Rose, I mean, this is a guy who had more hits than anybody ever played the game.
Well, see, the shame. The shame of this thing. Take a guy like a Jim Thome, and guys like Jim Thome and Frank Thomas will hang their hats on. We didn't do it; the other guys did. But Jim Thome, great guy, great player, should be in the Hall of Fame. But I don't think Jim Thome comes up to the level, say, of a Barry Bonds or a Rafael Palmeiro as a player. At least not a Barry Bonds, I'll say.
I was never a big. I guess I just wasn't a Palmeiro fan.
No, but I mean again, 500 homers, 3,000 hits.
Yeah,
those are
made the big mistake of grandstanding in front of Congress and shaking his finger in their face.
But as I always say, he's in trouble for lying to the biggest bunch of liars you'll find in the whole country altogether. Anyway,
that's right.
So
that's right. And I think the other big story that was a non-story, and it was just idiotic. What's your feeling about Clark, the Cub mascot?
I don't have a feeling about any mascots. If they're there, fine. They don't bother me. They don't entertain me.
Then everybody thinks that's indicative of the problems of the Cubs. Some marketing ploy that they come in because they get a mascot who's a big cuddly bear that they're trying to appeal to families and the kids.
Well,
and he wears his cap backwards and doesn't have any pants.
The Cubs are in two businesses. They're in the baseball business and they're in the entertainment business.
That's right.
And if you cannot put a good product on the field baseball wise, you have to do some other things. And if this is a thing that they think they need to do to bring more fans in, whether it works or not, I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's something that they felt they had to do, and I don't think it's a big thing.
Incredible non-story, but everybody kept making it because of social media.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, too, now it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen if they do not sign Tanaka, because over the weekend, Theo Epstein told the fans at the Cub convention is he reserved payroll for a run at one big move.
For one big move, huh?
Right, and if he doesn't get him, he said he might roll that savings into next year's budget. So if it doesn't happen, look for another 95 losses.
I don't think Tanaka's going to keep us from doing another 90 or 95 losses.
No, I don't think so either. I think even if we get him, maybe it'll be 85 losses. I don't know. But I think what I'm hoping we're going to see is we're going to at least start to see some of the position players. And by the music playing, I guess we won't be able to talk about that any longer.
Alrighty.
All right.
John says it's time to
John
leave.
says it's time to go. Thanks to John DeVita for spinning the dials. Thanks to
Don't
James
forget James Rhodey.
for spinning the dials, too, keeping us sounding good. That's going to wrap it up for this week's edition. We'll catch you next time, and have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, edited by Stephen Lehman. Our audio engineer is James Rhodey, and our co-executive producer of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is John Chiconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, January the 21st, the year 2014. Be safe, and thanks for listening.